Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, we're doing some thrift flips using milk paint, decoupage and stencils. My first project today is this little wooden handmade cabinet. Now it's not perfect, but I thought it looked quite primitive, so we're going to go in that direction today. I also had this little plaque. Someone had already painted it, but I thought I could add it to the back for a nice little detail. On Pinterest I saw a lot of little apothecary cabinets and I thought I would try and create a look that's similar. Here you can see I'm lining it up where I want it to go, and I'm drawing a line in pencil so that when I flip this cabinet on its front to attach the back, I can have it in perfect position. I've then flipped the piece on its front and I'm using my nail gun to nail that piece in place. I'm then going to be using a custom mix of vintage laurel and sea glass fusion milk paint. I want quite a rustic, primitive look for this piece, so I'm applying my milk paint with a chip brush, and you'll be able to see that I have lots of chunks in my milk paint mixture, and that's fine. This is just going to add to the texture. It's going to help when it comes time for me to speed up the drying process, and I'm going to be doing that in sections. So I'm starting with the top section here. I'm applying my paint pretty thick, and then I'm grabbing my heat gun to speed up that drying process to create some cracks and some lovely texture to create a wonderfully rustic primitive look. Remember, you can find a full product list in the description of this video and all of these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. So I'm going to be repeating the same steps, working in sections and applying my milk paint quite heavy, and then using my heat gun to speed up that drying process to create cracking and texture. Now you do not have to do this if you don't want your paint to be textured and chippy. You can definitely let it dry naturally. Milk paint actually dries pretty quick. It's only about a half an hour to an hour, and it actually cures in about 30 minutes as well. So it's a wonderful product to use and definitely something that's safe to use indoors. Now you can see as I'm going along that I'm also painting the handles, I am painting the edges. This whole cabinet, well, the outside of it, is going to be that wonderful custom mix of milk paint that we created. If you're interested in learning more about milk paint, I've already done a lot of videos on this wonderful product, so I will put some suggestions up in the top right hand corner of this video if you'd like to see more. Here you can see that I am painting over the top of the design that was on the back of that little plaque. So we're going straight over the top, and I always like to paint the back of my projects if they are something that could be sat on a counter or somewhere that the back might be visible. I feel like it just makes it look like a more finished piece. When my paint is dry, I'm going to add JRV's Apothecary Labels 1 stencil. I just have a small little artist brush. I'm using some of Dixie Belle's Anchor Silk Mineral Paint. I'm dabbing off the excess, and I'm just making sure that I'm not pressing too hard with my brush. You really don't need much paint on your brush at all when you're stenciling. In fact, less is definitely more. So I'm going to work my way across until I have this bottom section of the stencil in place where I want it to go. And because this is a little bit of a tricky area that I'm stenciling on, I'm then going to be repositioning my stencil so that I can get the rest of the design in. So you'll see that I have cleaned the stencil, I'm positioning it where I want it to go, and then I'm going to hold it in place as I add my paint. Now, if you are not confident holding your stencil in place, you could tape it in place, or you could use some sort of a spray adhesive on the back of your stencil. As I said previously, I was definitely inspired by a lot of apothecary cabinets that I saw on Pinterest, and a lot of them had some sort of signage or lettering up the top of the cabinet, so I felt like this was a really nice touch. When my paint was dry, I used some 220 grit sandpaper to lightly distress the stenciling that we've done. Again, I feel like this will add to the rustic primitive look. To seal my milk paint, I'm using some of Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear. I'm just applying it with a natural bristle brush, and To start off with, it is going to look a little bit patchy. That's just because the wax is drying and settling. So don't panic if this happens, it will even out. And here I'm just using a microfiber cloth to buff off the excess wax. And here's our finished primitive cabinet. I love how this turned out. It has a lot of imperfections, but it also has a lot of charm. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For our next project, I'm going to be giving this little hook plaque a makeover. My first step is to remove the hook. It had a little nut on the back that I'm using a small set of pliers to remove, and then I can take the hook off. I'm then going to be using Dixie Belle's Fluff Chalk Mineral Paint. This is a lovely white. It has a touch of grey to it, and I'm going to give this piece 2 coats. So I'm going to paint the front part and also the edges. This is going to be a great base for our decoupage paper. I have had a few people asking me if it's entirely necessary to add the white under your paper, and I feel like it allows the colours to really show to their best advantage if you do this. When my paint has completely dried, I'm going to be using Roycycled's Fall Botanical Project blocks. Now you can see that this is some scrap that I have. I always keep these. I have my little base down. I'm using a lead pencil to trace around the area that I'm going to need. And then I'm going to use my scissors to trim out the sections that I want. And again, I'm going to save my scraps because you never know when you might use them again. Next, I'm going to be using Dixie Belle's Flat Clear Coat as my decoupage medium. I'm putting down a base of the product, and then I'm going to be using my mister to lightly mist my paper. I had quite a few creases in the design, and this is going to allow it to expand. I'm positioning it in the center. I'm misting it again, and then I'm using a ball of cling wrap to smooth out any wrinkles or air bubbles. You can see that my edges were sort of puckering and lifting up at the sides, so I used my mister again to mist my paper. It allows the paper to relax and release, and then I'm going to go in with one more coat of the flat clear coat over the top of my paper. When my paper is completely dry, I'm going to use some 220 grit sandpaper. I'm going to use a downward motion and I'm going to sand off that excess paper. Doing that gives us a lovely clean edge. I'm then going to use a pencil to very carefully make a hole where our little hook has to go in, and then I'm going to give it one more coat of the clear coat to seal the sides and the little hole, just to make sure everything is sealed and protected. And then when that's dry, I'm going to add the hook. So I'm just going to carefully press it back into place, and then I will add that little nut on the back to secure it. And here's our finished wall hook. This was a quick and easy project, but that decoupage paper has definitely completely transformed a very dated piece. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Our final project today is this wooden crate. To begin, I'm going to be using a mixture of Dixie Belle's Sea Spray with their coffee bean chalk mineral paint. I'm brushing it on, and then I'm going to dab and stipple the mixture on to create some texture. This piece is going to be all about layering. I want this to look like a really old industrial crate that's been painted many times, and I really feel like layers allows you to achieve this look. So I'm going to repeat this same process, adding that Sea Spray mixture to the entire crate. Crates have a lot of different angles to consider, so when you're painting, make sure that you're adjusting your piece, looking at it from different angles to make sure you don't miss any areas. Next, I'm going to be using Fusion's Sea Glass Milk Paint. I'm going to put about half a capful in there, and then I'm going to add the same amount of water into my mix and stir it well. And then I'm going to start adding it to my crate. My Sea Spray mixture is already completely dry, and you'll see I'm just going in and adding that mixture randomly. I'm not putting it in the exact same spot. on each of the sides. Again, this needs to look like chippy, worn off paint that's going to show through our next layer. So I'm going to work my way around the crate, adding that sea glass mixture. Once I had painted all of the crate with that mixture, I did use my heat gun to speed up the drying process in some of the areas. This is going to add to that wonderful texture. It's going to give us a few little cracks here, but we really just need it to be perfectly dry for the next step. I'm then going to use Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear. I'm adding this in random spots with my finger. This is going to create a bit of a resist. It's also going to help when we do some wet distressing. Next, I'm going to mix up some of Fusion's Hotel Robe. Again, I've just got a little half a capful there. I'm putting the same amount of water in. This time after stirring, I did decide to use my little milk frother mixer that I have. It's just battery operated. This is just going to stir it really well, and it's also going to make our mixture a bit frothy and thick. I'm then going to start applying it to my crate, and you'll see that I allow my brush to skip over certain sections, but also the wax that we put down earlier is going to be a little bit of a resist. So you may see some areas pulling back. That's just the wax doing its job. And then I'm going to use my heat gun and start the drying process. I'm going to work in sections, because we need to be heating up and drying that milk paint when it's still initially wet in order to get the texture and the cracks. Once my paint is completely dry, you can see some of the texture that we've managed to create, but I still wanted to be able to see some more of the layers that we created. So I am going to use a wet wipe to come in and do some wet distressing, just to pull back some of those layers so we can see some more of that black, some more of that sea glass. If you liked how it looked to start off with and you want to try this at home, you would just leave this step out. Next, I'm going to use one of the stencils from JRV's mini advertising labels pack, and I'm just repeating the same process as before. I have a little bit of paint on my brush. This time I'm using some coffee bean, and I'm going to start doing my dabbing and swirling over the top of the stencil. I'm just holding it in place. You can see I'm just using part of the stencil up the top, and remember, you can do this. You can pick and choose which parts of the stencil that you're going to use. And once I have added that particular label there, I'm then going to take another one of JRV's label. This is the mini grain sack stencils, and I'm just adding a date down the bottom, but you can see that I'm being careful not to overdo it on the paint in a certain section because the paint is worn away. It would look odd to have a perfect stencil over the top of that chippy paint. When my paint is completely dry, I'm using some 220 grit sandpaper to lightly distress. I'm then going to use Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear to seal my crate. I wanted to add just a little bit more age to this piece, so I'm using some brown Best Dang wax and I'm just adding a little bit to my crate. I'm not going too heavy, and then because we have that clear wax underneath, I'm able to wipe back as much or as little as I want. And here's our finished rustic crate. I love how this turned out. Adding all those layers together has really created a rustic piece. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video and that it's inspired you to give milk paint or decoupage or stenciling a go. Let me know if you had a favorite project from today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.